Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our broadcast panel event. First of all, thank you to all of our panelists for giving up their time this evening to come and join us. As you know, many of you submitted plenty of questions already ahead of this evening, so we'll start with kind of a brief overview as to who our panelists are, their career journeys, and then dive a little bit further into some of those specific questions that were asked. So, Erin, if you'd like to kick us off and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Gordon. My camera's doing weird things. My name is Aaron Gordon. I'm the head of department for BBC Media Operations, which is a really boring title for quite a cool job, I think, which basically is that I look after all of our studios for things like the 10 o'clock news, 6 o'clock news, lots of radio output and lots of streaming output at the BBC. So I've been doing that job for about 6 months now. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
And we're also joined by Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Donaldson from Sky News. I'm a senior director and technical specialist, so I tend to direct the programs, a lot of the output, but then I also get very involved in the sort of the technical guts of our automation system, so keeping us on air 24 hours a day.
Lovely. And we have Jake.
Hello, I'm Jake. I'm a creative producer working in on-air TV promos and in social media content. I'm currently working at Warner Brothers Discovery, primarily in kids content like Cartoon Network. And that basically means I watch the show and hopefully try and make something that gets you to watch the show or gets our desired audience to watch the show. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. And finally, we have Megan.
Hi everyone, my name's Megan Samurai. I'm a production journalist at ITV News Meridian. So that is one of the regional news channels of ITV. So we cover the Thames Valley, South and Southeast. So I've been at Meridian for about 3 years now. And as a PJ, it's quite a varied role. You're doing things like writing stories, editing videos, kind of planning coverage for the days ahead and going out and shooting and filming reports too.
Great, thank you everyone. So I guess the first and foremost, everyone wants to know the different career paths which have led you into all of the roles that you're in today. So I'm going to open it up to the floor of our panelists now to jump in and tell us a little bit about how you've got to the role you're in now.
Who wants to say, I just sort of kind of fell into it first? Who wants to go there?
I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I've always had an interest in this sort of stuff. So I started by making music and recording bands when I was younger. Then I did hospital radio and I ended up redesigning the whole jingle package. So I was very audio at the start. Then I went to Farnborough Tech and I had to beg them to let me in because I didn't have the right qualifications. I think I went for 3 years interviewing with them and eventually they took pity on me and let me in. And then because I'd been working in petrol stations and supermarkets, I knew that I had to really make something of this college course. And so I did. And I actually wasn't that confident. I'm actually not that confident now. But I made a big effort to put my hand up, lead projects. And I eventually led the campus TV channel, which if you knew me then was completely not the sort of thing that I would do. And that's sort of the beginning of my journey. I'll let somebody else come in.
I'm happy to pick up. I'm probably not the best example because I actually didn't go to university in the end, although my plan was to always go to university. But I basically got started in television at the age of 16. I interviewed a couple of different editors, the editor of Newsround, the editor of Channel 4 News, and the editor of Channel 5 News back in the late 90s, a long time ago. And I was doing a VT for a television program called Right to Reply, and the VT was about news for young people, and I felt that Newsround was perhaps a little bit too, aimed at much younger audience. Channel 4 News was a bit too highbrow, but Channel 5 News, which was this new thing back in the late 90s, was a really exciting offering. So I interviewed the editor and the cameraman on the job, said, ask for some work experience. And I did. And then I did 2 weeks work experience and then basically ended up staying there for years until kind of the early 2000s. This was at ITN. And then at which point I moved over to Sky News to become a vision mixer there. So, and then various other things along the way. But I'd always planned to go to university, but because I basically got my dream job, which was to be a vision mixer at Sky News, I didn't. So I never looked back after that, really.
I can jump in. Yes, I don't think I fell into it either. I did go to uni. So for my undergrad, I didn't do a journalism related course. I did comparative literature. So it was like English, but with a bit more of a global kind of twist. But when I was in my final term, ready to graduate, the COVID pandemic happened. So in a way, with everything kind of shutting down, jobs weren't being offered left, right, and center. It kind of gave me a little bit of time at the start of the year to just sit down and think, okay, what is it I actually want to do? And I think I kind of saw TV and journalism as a little bit of like a, pipe dream. It's impossible to get on TV. How are you going to do this? How are you going to interview people for a living? It wasn't something that I saw as kind of super realistic. But I think, when we kind of got to the lockdown, I got to a bit of a point where I thought, I'm youngish, I'm in my 20s, I've got years and years to try it. And I think what's the worst that can happen is you just fail and you do another job. I was working as a kind of part-time tutor at the time alongside like my uni and things like that, and I just thought, well, if I don't make it in journalism, I'll just go back to being a tutor. So I kind of had a backup plan. So from there I noticed some friends recommended me a master's in broadcast journalism. So I did that at City University of London. I kind of had a look at the course and I just thought it fitted everything I wanted. It kind of offered a bit in TV and a bit in radio, so it just allowed me to keep my options open because at the time I wasn't 100% sure what exactly in the field I wanted to do. So from the masters, I then ended up getting some kind of freelance shifts with some of the local papers for Reach PLC, so things like the Berkshire Live, Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire Live kind of online newspapers. And then from there, I applied to something called the ITV News traineeship that some of you might have heard of. So every year they take on about 12, 13 people kind of through a vigorous application process. And then the people they pick, you're kind of spread out across all the different offices. So ITV Meridian, there was one, I was the one for that one. There's like a couple for ITV London, one or two for ITV Wales, and so on. So the traineeship was basically a year where you kind of build up your skills, you learn on the job, you visit different offices, getting formal training, and then that's kind of what got me into my career now.
Well, I just kind of fell into it, really. No, I was so I'm a creative writing graduate. And writing's kind of always been my first thing, first and foremost. But that's always been the outlet for making short films and cartoons, which is what I've spent most of my free time and get to sometimes do in professional time over the past decade and a bit. And I was working for a workplace health and safety company, making like course content and stuff. And I applied for a creative role at BBC Studios, which I didn't really know that was actually the name of the role itself. To be a creative, industry standard term is probably more creative producer. I just saw the word and went for it, and then they called me back eventually, and they were like, you don't have the experience to be a midweight person, but we have this junior role. We like what your cartoons you make in your own free time, and I was just happy to be like, yes, I will go and work in TV a bit. That sounds fun, and I had no idea about the world of cutting promos and working in commercial creative content, which is what I started doing. And I started off by cutting promos for the EMEA regions, which is Central Europe and Africa and Poland and the Nordic regions. And did that for 5 years at BBC Studios. A light has just gone off in here. I hope there's some room to vibe. Did that for 5 years. Learned all about copywriting and getting better as a video editor, and kind of learning the difference between art and creative on a sort of a professional level. And then through continuing to do that, I got experience in like voiceover, and animating for music video projects. And one thing's led to another, and now I moved here to Warner Brothers Discovery a year and a bit ago. So I guess I'm part of the wide-ranging freelance permalance creative scene. Which then if you work in TV, you guys, I imagine you guys have probably come across some people in a similar role to me. But yeah, that's my story thus far.
Amazing. Thank you, all of you. It's so nice to hear such a variety of different stories and routes into the industry. And I guess that leads us on to a question that we received a lot. It's a bit of a two-parter. And that is, what skills do you think are essential for a career in broadcast? And also, what qualities could help someone stand out in such a competitive industry?
Aaron and Kevin, you must have the insight.
I'm looking for my notes. I wrote stuff down. See, I wrote stuff like, I think, so I found it. So I've written integrity, honesty, getting on with all types of people, huge amounts of patience, and then a self-starter, someone who takes on a task and finds a way of completing it. Using your networks within your work to, to just get tasks done without having to be very needy and completely go back to your manager all the time. I mean, Aaron knows what I do, and I know how he works, and I think that's been very important in what both of us do. I think also it's been, I work in news, and I think Aaron might be different from me. I didn't aspire to work in news. I aspired probably to work in something slightly more, I'd say, creative. But I was given an opportunity, much like Jake, at European Business News, and often it's just somebody who interviews you, and they just see something about you, and they give you a chance. And they employed me to work in MCR, which is like the technical back room of a television channel. And then I think, as what you've got to do is, whatever role you're given, you've got to do it to the best of your ability and shine, and then push to then become multi-skilled. So I used to do TX and MCR. I did it well. I then became an editor, 2-machine editor, which was very basic editing. That led to 3-machine, Avid editing, promo editing, which Jake mentioned. And then I was given the opportunity to work in a live gallery and become a studio director. And so it was just, they saw something, they trusted me, and just do every job, even if you think it's the dullest job in the world, just do it, to the best of your ability.
Yeah, I think that's I would agree with that, and just try to enjoy it. Just graft. It is putting in the hours. I mean, I remember starting off doing a breakfast show for Channel 5. Meant waking up at kind of 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning. All of my friends were out at the pub on Friday night, and I was going home to bed early because it meant sacrificing, because I was going to go and work in television at a young age, and it was an amazing opportunity. And I remember every year that I kind of lasted, I sort of check in the early days, would check off a year and be like, wow, gosh, I lasted another year, because I loved it. And you've got to be passionate about it, whether it's television, streaming, radio, any type of broadcasting. It's got to, I think it really needs to come from within. It's got to be something that you care about and that you're passionate about. And you should be willing, whether it's right or not, and it probably isn't right for companies to ask people to do hundreds of hours, but you've got to be kind of have that willingness to do that. So I would do the breakfast show, and my shift was to go home. That was it. Like lunchtime was to go home, but I would stay for the evening news because I didn't know when this journey was going to end. So I wanted to get as many hours as possible in the newsroom, in the studio, because it was exciting to me. So I think having that genuine enthusiasm, that want to be involved in it, is really important. So passion is crucial, I would say.
Yeah, I can pick up on that as well. So I've also written notes, Kevin. So I guess with the skills that you think are needed, I think being adaptable to change, like if when you're working in news specifically, it's a fast-paced environment, you might be going out to do a shoot or pick up an interview for someone and things don't always go to plan. You might go to a shoot and they say, "Oh, I don't want to be interviewed. I don't want to be on TV. Things can change very quickly. So I think it's up to you, just being good with people always helps. You may need to, talk people around if you're in a situation like that, and having a willingness to learn as well. I think, you may have a job role that says journalist, but within that, there are so many different things you're doing. You're writing, you're editing, you're filming, you're planning. It's a lot of skills. So just being willing to learn is all, and having that, again, like Erin said, that enthusiasm and that passion is always going to help. And I think what would make someone stand out in things like interviews, I think it's just knowing your strengths and how you can sell yourself. So if one of your strengths is that you're good with people, it's maybe coming up with examples, how are you good with people, and just getting your personality out there as well. Like I think when I was trying to apply for the traineeship, it was the ITV traineeship, it was very competitive. I think, hundreds of people were applying, but I wasn't trying to think, oh, how can I be different to 699 other people? Because the chances are you're not going to be, completely different to everyone else. Some of you might have similar answers, but I think I was just trying to be myself and, as much as possible. I think you don't want to go into interviews behaving like how you think a journalist should behave, or just saying things that you think, people want to hear. I think they want to know what aspects of journalism are you interested in, what roles interest you. So I think it's more important to, just be yourself and be confident in things like that.
That sounds like an amazing scheme you went on, Megan.
Thank you. It was very fun. We got to kind of we like toured all the ITV offices. I was going to Birmingham, Manchester, Wales. So it was really good for networking. And I think you learn so much in 9 months. If anyone is watching and thinking about applying, it really is worth it.
Sounds it. I think I'm kind of it's interesting because you guys are all solidly news, whereas I'm in creative. And I agree with that. I agree particularly with like the points of passion and grafting and fundamentally believing in yourself. But I think for broadcast, and I mean, broadcast is an interesting term because I think when we think broadcast, we often think TV, terrestrial or otherwise. Especially like your line of work, Kevin, in terms of TX and VT and mixes and stuff. But in terms of, I think the thing that unites kind of all television things in terms of what's necessary to succeed in broadcast is perhaps a respect for the audience and respect for who is watching you, and understanding who is watching and what they want from what you're producing. That's a thing that I certainly found in sort of learning the difference between, say, doing art in your own time and working in creative, which is where you're making things to answer to a brief. You are attempting to solve the problem of how do we get these people to watch and keep watching what we're doing. For instance, on my end, that might be a X person in X country who is interested in this thing. How do we put this thing in front of them, and it will capture their interest and they'll keep watching it. But on you guys in news, I imagine it's very much so a case of, people come to your content because they want to be informed, because they want to know and they want to understand and they want to be spoken to, let's assume, like adults. If you're going to be sloppy, if you're not going to be on the ball, if you're not going to deliver high quality stuff in the way that perhaps they want, be that, to the point journalism like you're talking about, Megan, and like a decent sounds backhanded, a great high quality broadcast and that actually informs the people on the news end, like you, Kevin and Erin. What's the point in doing it at all? Like, people don't want to be pandered to, people don't want to be talked down to, people want to be entertained, they want to be I could go down a whole inspiring talk there, I'm sure, but fundamentally they're who you are connecting to. And they're there waiting for you to provide. And it's about respecting that and fulfilling that need. I think that's true across traditional linear broadcasting as much as it is making stuff for TV or for the internet on the creative side, I'd say. And following that, being respectful of the audience is a really key skill that unites it all, regardless of wherever you are in the industry, I think.
I think Megan said something that covers me and Erin, just being adaptable. So Erin and I will be dealing with live broadcasting. So Erin was a live director for a very long time, and I've vision mixed for Erin. and I was directing the Sky News output yesterday, and that story broke about the murders. And Sky News was on this path to do the Trump inauguration, and they did not expect that story to break yesterday, and all hell broke loose. And I was directing, and at certain points we've got an automation system, and you're supposed to know where you are in it. And the adaptability is saying to your co-director, "Can you please tell me what line number we're on? Because I have absolutely no idea." And then Matt Barbette telling me off for being too noisy in his ear, and it's then thinking, oh, actually the most important person here is the presenter, because he's currently ad-libbing for 15 minutes on a story that we didn't expect to break.
And did it all go off without a hitch?
Oh, there was lots of hitches. It was. I don't think you'd know. On air. I did meet Matt on the way out of. We have a building called Sky Central where our big studio is, where he was, and on the way out, much like me, he had forgotten most of what had happened. So I was apologising for making too much noise in his ear, and he said, "You know what? I didn't even remember that."
That's brilliant. And I think we've talked about a lot of these skills, but it's also really important to talk about, as we said, at the early stages of your career, many had also explored other options. And I guess one of the things we were asked specifically was transitioning your skills from radio to TV. But I guess how can you also transition your skills from other, perhaps non-related industries into the broadcast industry as well, or even the things you might have learned in student television?
I think so. I've written down that I'm an audio person, and I always have been. And so at college, I was lucky that I had lots of audio equipment. It was the mid 90s, so I had sequencers and samplers and sound desks, and there's an 8-track there behind me that I had at the time, and we were producing some pretty awful videos for the courses. They were pretty bad, but I could go home and save them with the audio, so I could record a really nice voiceover. And just do little tricks that I'd learned from doing hospital radio, that even though it was a god-awful video, when I added a bit of music and a voiceover and made it sparkle with the audio, I could just save it. And I got lots of distinctions by doing that. And that's where the crossover is. Audio is so important for television. And you can tell people that, and editing radio and the editorial side of editing audio is very similar as well, and it's all about pace, energy, and all that is relevant in audio and TV.
I think about 90% of the 90% of the work I put into, and 90% of any and all concerns, issues, or whether it's TV, audio, visual, or just audio, are entirely centered around audio. Audio is literally the heart of all things in this. I think if it sounds awful, people aren't going to be interested. If it, like you say there, Kevin, I think you can have the scrappiest, cheap looking, least well put together visual thing or visually formatted thing in the world, and if it sounds good, it's gonna carry like most of the thing. I think I was going to broadly talk about, like, being good at storytelling and being good at relaying information in a clear, exciting, engaging, interesting way translates from radio as much as it does to TV. And that's there. But to be honest, I think if you can make something fundamentally sound good, you're going to be an in-demand person. I think I don't often get to work with audio engineers these days, and every time I do, it's always like, we've sussed it, we're sussing it out. So just work in audio, guys. Everyone listening now, invest in audio.
I think it's interesting because worlds are colliding, aren't they? With you think about podcasts and actually even television production now. So thinking about things like The Traitors Uncloaked, for example, which, is recorded as a podcast. So it's audio first. Everyone's thinking about, how's that going to sound on the BBC Sounds app, for example. So those worlds are colliding. I think, so audio is crucial, because you've got to think, well, actually this content, and I think that's the way to look at it, is look at it as content. This can be used on television where it might be seen live once, but actually it might be replayed several times on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is, and that might be just something you're listening to, or so yeah, there's definitely a merging sort of world there.
Yeah, like you all said, I think it is all becoming more of a multimedia platform, isn't it? Like again, whether you're working for the radios or TV, you might be making social videos. And I think even making that move from radio or newspapers to TV, I don't it's not that much of a unique thing. A lot of people, like where I work, they were maybe in radio before. And I think there's a lot of common skills that bridge them. You're gonna be, depending on your role, you'll be doing writing in both of them, and having those just that tight, concise writing, that is going to be a skill that's going to, stand out when you're doing things like assessment days and again, editing, or again, depending on what kind of stations you're working for, having that new sense and that adaptability, coping under pressure, those are all things that would carry you over into TV as well.
Amazing. I think it's great to hear. We have so many students who will be here tonight who are part of both their student TV station and their student radio station or local radio as well. So I think that's really positive for them to hear. So we've been talking a lot about skills, and I think networking in itself could be argued as a skill. So what sort of advice would you give to our students who are looking to maybe begin networking within the industry, whether they're seeking advice or looking to gain some relevant work experience? How could they go about it and approach people who are kind of already in the industry? What's kind of the best ways to do that as well?
I think you need to be respectful first and foremost, but I also saying that, I think, don't take no for an answer. Just kind of push, and in a nice way. But actually, there's lots of opportunities out there. I think the industry is really tough right now. I think the globally the media industry is in a tough spot because of advertising revenue and things like that. BBC, obviously, the license fee. There's a lot of that. However, there are lots of opportunity for people, watching this, listening to this, because there'll be new roles created, and there'll be exciting opportunities. So just, find an area that you're interested in, go on to social media, find that person, i.e., through whether it's X or whatever, and try LinkedIn, more professional side of things, obviously, but, and make contact with them and just message, can I come for a visit? Can we have a coffee? Would you be willing to have a chat on the phone? That sort of thing. There's been so many people, and I've met people over the years at NaSTA that are now working in industry really successfully. Loads of people from the last sort of decade or so that I've been involved with NaSTA that are now doing brilliantly in the industry. So just, and that's probably because they've followed the right path, knocked on the right doors. But don't take no for an answer. Just keep pushing. You'll get there eventually.
I think like my boss is very keen on me to do things like this, and I have a contact with another university, but again, it's part of my network because somebody I was at college with is now a lecturer at a university, so I help them out. So we have a little network going on. But I think it is important on LinkedIn. I think definitely, like, if you're interested in stuff, then comment on stuff, but be very careful how you comment on it. There are some people who can be quite negative. So for me, I work in automation, and some people can be quite negative about automated directing. And so I think you have to be very careful, because one day you might get the opportunity to do that role, but they might see in your LinkedIn that you've said, well, really that's not as good as when you have a full gallery. And so it's, just being aware that, you have to be very careful what you say, and don't be too negative. But it's the same. I have people who do contact me, and I think you have to be patient, because sometimes we're doing some massive projects. So last year was mental. We did the UK election. We did a massive debate, and 2024 was just relentless. And so you have to remember that these people can be very, very busy, but they may have seen what you've said. And if you just give them a gentle reminder, you then might hook them. And as long as you're respectful and polite, I think sometimes that perseverance will hook somebody.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think LinkedIn can be very helpful in that way. Again, everybody's different, but I think when people have maybe reached out to me asking me about the ITV News traineeship, how do you stand out? What kinds of things are they looking for? Everyone might not think this way, but I think I personally, I don't want to be writing a bunch of paragraphs at 8 o'clock at night saying, here's what you do. So what I tend to say to people is, oh, I'd rather just talk for 15 minutes rather than writing an essay. So then I just might arrange a call with someone a couple of weeks later. That can be helpful. And I don't really know if this isn't technically networking. It sounds more like stalking. But I think when I kind of wanted to get into journalism, but I just had no idea how. I think when you're starting from scratch or starting from nothing, it's not one of those industries that's just inherently obvious. There's not one path. So then you're at a point, you're like 20, 21 years old and you don't really know what path is correct. So what I was doing was I was kind of looking at people on LinkedIn, just journalists and other people that I just thought, okay, I might want to do something similar. And, depending on how transparent people are, you can go on their experience. You can literally see, what uni they went to, what course they did, and after they finished uni, did they do a master's? Did they do an NCTJ? Did they not go to uni at all? Did they go straight in? And it kind of starts helping you just putting the pieces together of what kind of journey would you like to emulate as well. So just kind of having a look at the steps of how people have got to that dream job you want, that was quite helpful.
I think I can offer. I agree with everything said here, particularly coming from the professional standpoint. LinkedIn is so funny because it's so easy to. I find it so fascinating how people talk on LinkedIn, and I think it's very easy. I don't know if you guys feel the same. It's very easy for sometimes people to sort of enter robot voice mode, and all the conversations you see on the comments are like, "Wow, yes, excellent work, John. Wonderful, wonderful, blah blah blah," and like no one's actually speaking like a person. Which if you do the opposite may well make you come across as more attractive over LinkedIn and stuff. To offer perhaps a slight alternative or addition to everything that's been said here. Get the thing that someone here said perseverance. I think Kevin, you talked about perseverance. I think perseverance in moving ahead in your ambitions professionally is absolutely important. But I think perseverance also comes from being willing to be doing the thing you want to do outside of potentially a day job, which is basically a fancy way of saying make stuff on your own time and always be willing to make stuff. I still make all my own cartoons and do plenty of voice work and stuff outside of my day job. The point of that being is that another great way that fundamentally to network is to want to collaborate with someone and collaborate with new people and work with new people alongside them, for them, with them, etc. And in the world that we currently live in, with more artists online than ever before, or more creatives online or ever before, or more entrepreneurs online than ever before, there are so many people out there who you can connect with and collaborate with and meet just over platforms such as huge caveat of obviously please be respectful, etc., etc. But you can meet over platforms like Instagram and TikTok and other places too, who you can also make things with and add fundamentally, I think, to your portfolio. I think from a creative point of view, having your own stuff that you can bring to an interview or a chat or a conversation, as well as a sparky manner and chipper attitude, is always going to be the thing that kind of sets you apart. I last year I animated a music video for a band who I connected with over TikTok, of all things, TikTok and then Instagram, because I was going around shopping my services to artists, and they had heard of me because of a previous one I had made. And that's a connection that just came about from being willing to share and connect with people and collaborate fundamentally with people online. And I think that's when you say networking, I think it's very easy to think of that as, for some people, perhaps a transactional exercise of, I could come work for you, will you hire me? And the other person might think, maybe I'll think about it. I don't know. Is this actually the grounding for a professional relationship, et cetera, et cetera? But I think it goes back to the collaborative side. People want to work with other good people, or people who connect with what they do. It was like me with that band, and I'm sure it's like everyone else here. And it's being willing to go to those other places, but putting yourself out there and not limiting yourself to any one platform, sharing your work, asking other people if they want to be involved, telling people you would love to be involved with their stuff. You know, the world is your oyster in that regard. It might not seem like the big step towards, you know, being a bit like a big time full-time job, but it all adds up in the long run. I always find, if only from an experience portfolio point of view, and you're probably going to meet some cool people that way as well.
I think as a student, you have sort of a unique way of networking, because you can work on a project on something you're interested in, and then contact those people and say, I'm a student, I'm working on this project, can I interview you? And you know, Erin is an example of somebody who did that. And so do a project on something you're passionate about, and then try to interview as many people, and because it's such a better way of introducing yourself to somebody, by showing that you're capable of asking them questions that are good questions, and you're making an interesting project. And so I think that's a really great way of networking, right? You know, as a student. Whereas if you just do projects that don't collaborate with organizations outside of the university, then that limits your network. And I think you can build networks when you're a student, and it's probably much easier to build networks when you're a student than it is when you come out and you're just suddenly on your own, and you've got no reason to make these projects anymore.
Amazing, that's really useful. And I think it's great, you know, we are so fortunate now to, in a way, have social media where we can just reach people from all over the world and ask them for advice. I guess as well, when you're putting yourself out there, it could feel a little bit daunting. So do you have any advice for someone who might be still navigating self-confidence or worried about imposter syndrome in such a creative industry?
Again, sorry, Jake, go ahead.
You go, Kevin, honest.
I haven't found what I wrote down. Can you feel?
Okay. I'll vamp for you. This is an interesting question, because I've been doing this job for sort of 6-7 years, and it's only in the past couple that I have really let go of any lasting sense of imposter syndrome, or not feeling like I'm doing the right thing, which I say is hopefully don't worry, even if you get a job, it's still gonna follow you around. But for me personally, the moment where it started to feel a lot better for me was when I started to appreciate the difference between, at least in my line of work, and I imagine this is true on the news side as well, the difference between creative stuff that you're making in response to a brief, stuff that is fundamentally designed to sell a TV show, a product, a service, a subscription service or whatever to an audience, and art, making stuff in your own time, your own passions, other stuff that you can just do whenever, and, you know, maybe incorporate as part of your career down the line, but is fundamentally for you and is what you're doing. And the point being that when I recognize the difference between, say, a promo that I have, or a video for social media that I have to cut in a certain way, has to include certain content that I can craft in the way that I best see fit from my own skills as an editor, as a copywriter, as an editor. And that finished product is out there doing what it has to do. It's been driven by, you know, the process of my creative and audience insight and everything else. And it's out there. And now I have to move on to do another one, because I at least at BBC, I used to have to do a promo sort of every 4 or 5 days or so. And when you sort of realize that that is out there and you've done your best and it's doing its job, and now you have to do another one, you let go of the notion that that last thing you did has to be the best thing I've ever made. It has to be the best thing I've ever made at this job. This one is going to pop off. This is the one that's going to win all the awards, etc., etc. And you just sort of learn to trust that you are good at what you do, that you know what you're doing, and that hopefully you're just going to get incrementally better as you go. And when you embrace that, tends to be how most, you know, I mean, Kevin and Aaron, you're doing this. You're doing this literally every day, over and over and over again with the process. You'll know this better than anyone. That trust that you have the skill to pull it off, and that you're doing well, and then you no longer have any doubt in your own ideas. You no longer have any doubt in having the skills to pull off what you think you want to pull off, because you've got a proven track record of doing things. And if that all else fails, you still have the stuff that you're making in your own time elsewhere, where you don't necessarily need to feel as gosh, am I hitting a certain standard of it needs to be of this standard of the brand or something. And I think when you really, for me, when I really understood the difference, that was where I sort of learned to certainly be less hard on myself, because I think that's what imposter syndrome is at the end of the day. The idea that you don't deserve to be here. You've not worked your way to be here. You've not built the networks. You've not talked to the people like everyone's been saying. I think recognizing the difference between the two, that's the key in my experience.
I quite like the idea of sort of turning points. So college was a turning point for me. So I'd been shy. I'm not very good at this. Terrible at presentations at college. And so I kept on seeing turning points and saying, okay, at this place, I'm going to be much more confident. And I did manage to succeed in doing it. I sort of had a bee in my bonnet about it. I'd identified my failings and I had bees in my bonnet about getting past them. But having the new chapter meant I could sort of do a reset, because at comprehensive school, I sort of hated it and I wasn't confident. College, I saw as a new chapter. I'm going to go for it. And I did. And I was doing all sorts of things I was pretty uncomfortable with. So leading teams, I don't know why I put my hand up to lead the campus channel, but it's because nobody else was. I was constantly in the room with people who had just left A level and had a slightly different attitude to me. And I just was in the room and nobody was putting their hand up. So I just, okay, I'll do it. and to be honest, I'm glad I did, because I loved all of it. And so, jobs are turning points as well. So when I first got my break at a satellite TV channel, I was young and I had fun for a bit, and I actually wasn't that well respected in my job. Erin knows James Haggart, and James Haggart taught me to direct, but James Haggart didn't want to teach me to direct because I used to muck about and not take it very seriously. But when I look back, I was young, and I think you've got to have fun, and then there again needs to be a turning point. There needs to be, I've got to take this really seriously now. And I got James Haggart on board, and he did direct me. He did train me to direct, and we're good friends now. So again, even if your reputation is a bit in tatters, you can still turn things around if you just decide, okay, this is a new chapter.
Yeah, I'd also just add, the line I always like to use is fake it till you make it, which is, that everyone around you is going through a similar thing. It's highly likely. And eventually it just falls into place. I had a number of jobs in the early years that, I thought, I remember when I left ITN and went to Sky, I was really well looked after at ITN, because, I was this young guy in the newsroom. I was like the little mascot for the program, and then I went off to Sky, and it was this big place, big campus. I was like, wow, gosh, this is really scary. It was very different, and it was very grown up and very different from anything that I'd experienced. And I didn't love it as much as I would straight away, but eventually, you start everything falls into place. And there are as Kevin said, there are those turning points, where you actually start to believe in yourself a little bit more. So just fake it till you make it. It'll all come good in the end.
Yeah, I think depending on your temperament, it doesn't, I think with the imposter syndrome, it doesn't always, go away as soon as you get the job. I think like Jake said, it can follow you a bit. And if you're someone like me, I love a bit of overthinking. I think when I, go to shoots or do interviews, I'm still always like driving there, nervous, thinking, oh, what's everyone gonna think? Oh, how am I gonna edit this? But I think maybe a lot of perfectionism, I think, can come into that, because when you're in the early stages of your career, you want everything you produce to be perfect and good, and you want everyone to like it. And I think just, we're only human. I think some months you'll come out and think, oh, I produced some great stuff. Some months, you'll feel a little bit less confident and think, oh, maybe you know, it just didn't go as well. But I think the key things, I think you just have to, you know, keep moving forward, even if you're scared about doing a shoot or whatever it is, or an application. It doesn't mean you don't do it. I think you still need to do it. It's just picking yourself up, being resilient, and just finding all the tools and techniques that, you know, work for you. Like, I think when you're in an industry and it can be very competitive, and you can have a lot of comparisons. You know, you're looking at what you're doing and there's like 100 other people on LinkedIn. They're all trying to do the same thing. They're all achieving every day. So it's just remembering to acknowledge your own achievements. That's what's going to help you stay confident. Look at what you've done, you know, whether that's like having like a album in your phone of just stuff you've done, or like writing it down, writing lists. One of my trainers, when I was a trainee, he used to say, you know, you have times where you will have that imposter syndrome. And he told us to remember our diamonds. He told us to make a list of all the diamonds and the good things. And it's like everybody else said, it's just trusting that you can do it and trusting in your own ability. I think those are the things that will just help reinforce that confidence.
Thinking about
I
what
think, like Aaron said, sorry, Jake. Like Aaron said, everybody's sort of going through the same thing. So yeah, I often have like a crisis of confidence. I'm always, you know, not thinking I'm doing the best things anymore, and often it's nonsense. So I think it's right that, you know, everybody is sort of going through it, and a lot of people in the companies I work at, so Sky, we have support networks. You know, so I am often supporting my colleague, and my colleague is often supporting me and bringing me up, and that's a really important part at work. And we're all having ups and downs constantly, and I think you should acknowledge that. And if you are struggling with imposter syndrome or your confidence, whatever it is, then just talk about it to somebody.
I was just going to say, considering what you were saying about turning points, Kevin, did any of you guys feel like working remotely over lockdown initially, did that feel like a turning point for you in terms of your career in any way at all? Especially you, Megan, considering you started out in those conditions.
I don't know. I think I mean it affected things in the sense of my masters maybe we kind of had a couple of news days where we would go in person. But I think I don't know, for me, I don't think it kind of detrimentally impacted anything too much. But I think with an industry like this, it is compared to, you know, what was going on in lockdown, you do really see the benefits of working in person, being around colleagues. Like I think like one of you said earlier, like I don't know if I'll call myself the mascot, but I'm one of the youngest in my office in Kent. You know, everybody's a bit more older and a bit more senior, but just, you know, I think if I'd maybe joined ITV and, you know, it had been the pandemic, because by the time I joined it was January 2022, so we were all kind of coming out of it. But I think if I joined at that time, it would have been a different experience, because now you're getting so much, you know, personal connection. You're just watching how, you know, people are producing programs, how they're filming, how they're planning. And I think you absorb a lot of that, and then that helps with your own confidence and learning as well. But hopefully that answered the question, Jake.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if you guys think so, Kevin, in terms of like
It-
remote broadcast and stuff, like pulling it off remotely.
Well, yes, because it didn't change at first to be straight away, because Sky employees had a letter that you could wave at the policeman to say that, you know, you were allowed to go to Sky because you were
Fair
critical.
enough.
But then they started saying that people with asthma and chest conditions shouldn't go in to work, and so I basically waved a document that my doctor had sent me to my boss, and I basically got sent home. And then things changed a lot, and but it was great actually. I actually worked harder in lockdown than I would have done if I'd gone to Sky, because I ended up producing vodcasts with Sarah Jane Me and some other people, and we did everything because there was no resource left at Sky. We did everything. I basically made it here, which is why I've sort of got this set up. And so I edited it in Marlow. SJ was in London because she couldn't leave either. She was pregnant, and it was a really great time. I was doing like 15-hour days because we were trying to do this whole thing remotely, and it was just insane.
Yeah, I think I probably worked the hardest I've ever worked during lockdown, and actually I was very grateful for it. I was never at home. I was directing Good Morning Britain. I was running Good Morning Britain back then, and we inherited Lorraine Kelly's show. So I ended up going from directing a 3-hour breakfast show to adding another hour on. So I was doing 4 hours of live television on ITV every morning, but there were so few people in the building that it was this like little gang, you know. So it was Piers Morgan, Susanna Reid, Lorraine Kelly, and basically me and a couple of other people up in the control room. And but it you know, we had fun doing it, and you know, and I think I think we played a really important you know role in what was happening in the world, and we were you know, because live television became so important because you know recorded programming stopped being made, and this live daily output where people just wanted information became really, really important, more than ever, I would argue. But I was very grateful. Like Kevin, I had a letter. I was stopped by the police several times on the way into work because I was going in at like 3 o'clock in the morning. But you know, I'm really grateful that I worked, because I think if I was stuck at home doing jigsaw puzzles, I would probably have gone insane. But yes.
Fair. Sorry, Sophia, I took a tangent from you there.
No, it's so it's so interesting. And I was just sat there now, even just thinking about talking about turning points. And I guess even for myself, I'm thinking, oh yeah, lots of different turning points. You know, even I look back when I was at school, I was almost leading like a double life. I was really quiet at school, and then I had a YouTube channel where I was speaking to like tens of thousands of people every week. And then I think even then, if you told me, oh, you were going to be a station manager when you get to uni, wouldn't have believed it. And now I'm at the next turning point, I guess, where about to start my graduate scheme and all those sorts of things. So as you were talking, I just thought, yeah, this is so true. I think everyone watching will be able to relate to that at some point, thinking, oh yeah, this has happened and now I'm doing this as well. And I guess we've talked about COVID now and also the struggles and things like that. So I want to finish kind of this session on a real positive and ask you guys, what do you think's been the highlight or your proudest achievement so far throughout your career?
Mine are mine are mainly technical. So I launched Sky News HD and SD, which was this really complicated setup in Sky News where we produced two outputs, one which was just a normal SD channel, and then one that had like HD written on it. And so I had this one brand new vision mixing desk that we sort of divided in two, and when the operator pressed the button, it would produce these two TV channels. And I loved doing that, and it was learning a new piece of kit. It was using lots of skills that I'd learned at EBN, CNBC, and ITN, and it was really reliable as well. So you know, producing something that the guys could use every single day, and you know, TV's like in live TV, it's like an aeroplane, and you want every single day you've got to learn from the mistakes of the previous ones, and then just make more robust systems. And that's how we worked through the rehearsal stage of that. And also, I think this year we did the Sky News debate. I think Erin would have worked on one as well, and it was such an amazing production. We took a whole production up to Grimsby with a big OB truck. We had a lovely hall which was lit and 11 cameras, and I was sort of technical oversight. So anything that Stuart, the director, had to deal with, but it was too much for him, I would take it on, and I was dealing with transmission paths and just everything to make it successful. And I really loved doing that, and it was, you know, that was a real big highlight just this year.
I can,
Yeah,
yes.
you can go.
To be TV specific, the thing I sort of like Kevin says, in terms of a technical point of view, the most satisfying moments for me are always when I can sneak some kooky thing into what I'm doing that just makes the whole thing worth it. Because like I've talked a lot about the difference between art and creative. But the moment when you can fit, like, say, you can fit like a scream or something, like a mortified, like, or something like in the back of a promo. Like I made a promo for Total Wipeout in South Africa, and that involves lots of people falling off of things and falling into water and stuff. And every single scream in the background was me recording myself in the lift or something at White City, just so I could sneak that in there, and doing things like managing to sneak fun copy into stuff. Yeah, or songs like in my second promo, I'm a death metal guy, and for my second promo ever, I fit a song by the band Rotting Christ on TV, and I was very like, I did it, I put death metal on TV, huh? But the proudest, I think, fundamentally, a couple of years ago, I went through a bit of a career upset where someone else was offered a role that I felt that I deserved, and kind of, I'm sure we can all relate to things like this. Slightly got in a bit of a personal tears about it, but chose to be to kind of feel what I was feeling, but kind of be a little bit graceful about it. And what ended up happening was I ended up working on this campaign for Polish TV called Spring of Love, which was a romance-centric promo campaign we were doing. And we turned it around in 2 weeks. And we did that because the people who I worked with regularly, they trusted that I was as good as I was, that I could have I could have gotten that role, and could have continued to succeed if it weren't for various factors, and supported me all the way through it. And sort of it became this very tightly knit project and team that was one of the best things we made that year. We were all really, really proud of it. And I was proud of myself because I was able to do it, but fundamentally that, despite not progressing how I wanted to, the people around me, for once in my life, I respected that they trusted me and knew I could pull it off. And I will always hold that, pulling that off in highest, it's just a little TV campaign. I'm sure it doesn't mean a lot in the grand scheme, but I will always think of that and that experience when it comes to moving forward in this career. It was a proud moment.
I haven't put any death metal on TV yet. So
Why not?
I think my proudest career moment is probably a bit more
Yours
serious
is
than
probably a
death
lot
metal.
better.
Well, no, we do like, sometimes if I do a piece, I do put a bit of music in it because we have a system where we can like find music. So next time, I think when the story is right, I'll have to see how much death metal we have got cleared in the system. But no, I think my proudest achievements, I think it's just, when you put so much work into the stories that you're pitching and you're trying to set up, and that's when they come into fruition. I think it's such a great feeling. Like last year at the start of 2024, I think I wrote down just like a wish list of stories I possibly wanted to report on, and I think like I managed to tick off a kind of good few over the year. And I think that was just, it was just really rewarding saying, okay, I want to, because I'm not a reporter as my day job, it's more kind of the additional thing that I want to go towards. So trying to set myself targets of, okay, try and do this many reports a month or this many every couple of weeks, that was just kind of what propelled me forward. Like I think one of the examples that kind of stood out to me was I set up a piece for South Asian Heritage Month, and I was trying to be quite ambitious with it. There was this filmmaker from Berkshire called Parvinder, and she's making this indie film, and she's got quite a big kind of some big names in there. So there was the guy who plays Neville Longbottom in Harry Potter, what's his name? Matthew Lewis, he was in it. And then an EastEnders, and goodness gracious me, Nina Wadia, actress, she was in it as well. So I was thinking, oh, I really want to do this story. So once my news desk said, okay, yes, you can do it, it was just, making contact, seeing, can we interview all of these people? And, different people, it's an indie film, so different people were going to different locations on different days. So it took about 3 or 4 weeks of kind of back and forth with our main interviewee, the filmmaker, thinking, okay, which locations can we shoot at? What time? Just kind of putting all the pieces together. But in the end, we did end up doing 2 locations, and then I kind of rocked up to one of them, going to an interview with Nina Wadia, self-shooting on my camera, hoping that she would be merciful and have patience with me, which she did. Because when you're shooting on your own, things can always be a little bit slower. But I think when you have a story like that you really want to do, and it takes a lot of organization, a lot of effort, a lot of work, those are always the things you're going to be really proud of when you're seeing that edit come together and it's got all those elements and pieces that you want. It's just kind of making those visions into a reality, I think.
I wanted to pick up on something that Jake said. Sorry, Aaron, have you not gone yet?
No, you go ahead.
I just wanted to talk about, because he spoke about setbacks, and I think that's really important, that if you have setbacks in your career, then the best thing to do is crack on. and carry on, and stop moaning, respect that somebody else has maybe been promoted above you. It happened to me, and it quite often things come good as long as you maintain, as long as you have really good integrity, crack on with your job, then normally you will be rewarded in the end.
I was to say, I think going back to your question, Sophia, about proudest moments. I mean, I feel like my proudest achievement professionally was launching Good Morning Britain. And I feel that, that was a big moment for me, because I felt that it was a huge opportunity, and if I got it wrong, I would have been fired. And if we got it right, then lots of amazing things would happen. Thankfully, the latter happened. And I think the thing that I feel quite proud of is that I left Good Morning Britain 3 years ago, but I worked there for nearly 9 years, 8 years. But I look at the show, and even though I'm not there are still the things that I put in place are still there. And it's the same for other shows that I've launched. But my most personal achievement was directing the ITV election debates, I think, because it was a huge challenge. And it was something I was asked to do by the executive producer. And I was directing Good Morning Britain and another show at this point. And I didn't need to do it. And I remember I was so stressed on the Saturday, I think it was Saturday night we were rehearsing, and it went horrifically wrong. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this? This is such a stupid decision. I should just stick to my day job. And then we pulled it off, obviously, the next day. And I just felt, 9 million people, I think, watched that. And I was just, that for me was a big moment, big studio in Salford at Media City. It really felt special. But then lots of little things along the way. But I think those are the things that stand out as, like, my proudest moments, I would say.
It's supposed to go wrong in rehearsal.
Yeah, I think it's when it goes horrifically wrong, and you're like, I think it's just you question yourself, like, why would you need to do this? You've got a job, you don't need to take this on. But no, it's all character building stuff, and things do go wrong along the line. But the important thing is to learn from those mistakes, and everything happens for a reason, and if you can learn from it, there's never a wrong move. It will always come back and help you in some way, shape, or form down the line.
Aaron's been quite modest about his audio stuff, because the Good Morning Britain theme, I would be quite proud of
that. The Good Morning Britain, yeah. Well, the guys that did the Good Morning Britain theme are brilliant, and but yeah, there's so many brilliant people in the industry. I think come and work in broadcasting. Why wouldn't what a great place to be with some wonderful people.
It is crazy on that. I think all the time what the fact that this is a job, like this is a realm of work that even exists at all is insane. Like when you really think about it, like that, like millions of years ago, a monkey escaped from a tiger so that I could be here as putting death metal on TV, and so that's fun. The fact that that's even a thing that's happened in the realm of the universe, I think, speaks to what you're saying.
But they were doing news then. They were painting on the walls.
True, and they didn't. But they hadn't cracked audio yet.
No,
So
hopeless at it.
It is amazing. You do get to do crazy things, and in a super fun way, in such a myriad, but different fun ways as well. I think everyone will agree.
Oh yeah, and just enjoy it. I mean, an old boss of mine used to say, it's not brain surgery. It's like not a matter of life or death. Things go wrong. I think Kevin and I would imagine, have been in situations where we both probably got quite worked up about stuff going wrong on live television. But you put it to bed, you move on, learn from it. Next day is a fresh day. Start again. But it's a very fun place to be. It can be anyway.
I think that's really important. Like you say, putting things to bed. We work with some people that have long memories, and That's not a very respectful way of working. I think, you know, whoever you are in TV, whether you've just screwed up the auto cue, so if you've gone to the toilet and you haven't been back by the time the break's finished, just stuff like that, it happens. And I will get quite passionate about, you know, how angry I am. But I think it's important to forget it the next day, and, you know, the next day is a new day, and, you know, crack on. Be kind
to yourself as well as everyone else.
Yeah.
Well, amazing. That is all we have time for this evening. So thank you to all of you for giving up your time this evening. This has been so insightful and so helpful for everyone who's been here as well. And like Erin said earlier, networking is a great opportunity, which you can also do in person in April in Southampton at NaSTA's annual weekend. So tickets are live on our website now. If you want to find out some more about that, I thought I would just somehow sneak that in there. But thank you so much once again for all of you being here tonight, and of course to our students as well for attending, and we will see you all very soon with our next panel event. Thank you.